first or second time.
That you mean first or second?
That would change. Yeah, the first or second, not second line, but first or second infusion, because it's too long and too many side effects. So they prefer if we do it.
Okay, so these are the people.
Sorry, can you just elaborate on that? I haven't quite got it.
Yeah, when you give Darzalex, the first time you give it, if you give the full dose, and there are some people who just give half dose the first time, but if you give full dose, it can be 10 or 12 hours. And during that time, people get shaking chills and fevers and drop their blood pressure and have trouble breathing. And so that's not something you want to do in your small office.
Right. So that's quite a meaningful barrier to adoption.
For now, but if it's approved sub-Q in a year.
Okay.
So what do they do now? Do they just send it to you, or do they just stick with the triplets?
So if they want to use Darzalex, half of them are comfortable doing it in their office. They've got experienced nurses, and they have no trouble.
Yeah.
Half of them ask us to give the first couple of doses.
And do they all come, or do the half of them that ask you to do it, they end up not doing it?
No, they come.
It's only they come. Okay, so we wouldn't expect the overall volume of Revlimid to actually increase, right? Because it's just basically moving from you administering it to them administering it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the other thing that's going to happen is if it's approved, it gets marketed. If it's approved, it's easier to get insurance coverage. So you can, and if the data from Maya, which I think is it's going to be pretty easy. If the data from Maya leads to FDA approval, or the data from Griffin leads to FDA approval, then it's going to be it'll be taken up pretty quickly in Northern California.
Okay. Now let's circle back to the community setting where they're still on doublets. Do you think they will move to triplets, including Darzalex first, or do you think they'll move to IVD first before they catch on to Darzalex?
Yeah, well, I think the people who never added the people who never did triplets before, even though the data is pretty overwhelming, that RVD is better than RVD. I think they're going to be slow to pick up on Darzalex. I'm guessing they'll be slow.
I get that they will be slow, but do you think they'll move to RVD, or do you think they skip RVD and just go straight to RDD?
They skip. Wow. Depends on how well Janssen, and J&J market it. I don't think Millennium did a very good job of marketing Velcade. But if Janssen does a good job of marketing to everybody in the community and it becomes sub-Q, I think it might be taken up more quickly than Velcade. You're right. They may skip Velcade.
Okay. Maybe one more question in terms of what about the uptake of quadruplets versus triplets? What do you see as the key barrier? Oh, hang on.
Sorry, can I just I'm just conscious of time. Can we actually jump to some of the newer treatments? So you referenced it a little bit in terms of like CAR T therapy and some of the areas where you're innovating. So if we roll forward, so paint a scenario, let's roll forward kind of 5 years from now, and let's assume that Dara is used in first line, as you would be suggesting and recommending. Then what I'm trying to understand is what is the next generation of treatments that are being developed? What could that do to the use of Darzalex or Dara? Should we assume that some of the new developments like CAR T would be an addition, or would they replace the potential use of Darzalex plus RVD or whatever it is by then.
Yeah. So there will always be a need for an initial therapy. You can't give a CAR T in the face of overwhelming new diagnosis. There's just too much disease there, probably a lot of cytokine release syndrome. So I imagine, and there's a lead time between deciding to give someone a CAR T, collecting their cells, having it engineered, giving them the cells back. It's not readily off the shelf, right? So there will be a need for, say, a DARA RVD or a DARA KRD initially. And then if we get to a point where CAR T, in fact, is curative, it may not be with this first generation, but second or third generation, or a BiTE is curative, then they would get that with when they have minimal residual, and then they'd be done. This is my fantasy. So there will always be a need for DARZALEX frontline. It just may be curtailed. It may just be 6 months.
Got it. So the in your dream scenario is patient turns up, you give them whatever it was, DARA plus RVD or KRD, I can't remember which was your preferred. They get to minimum residual quickly, at which point you do your CAR T and you cure them, and then they live happily ever after. Is that okay? That's
it. That's my dream.
Good. Well, let's on behalf of all your patients, let's keep our fingers crossed that happens. Just help me understand how long it might take for that dream of yours to materialize, particularly in terms of the development of CAR T. Yeah,
5 to 10 years.
5 to 10 years.
Because what we're seeing now, and it'll be reported, at ASH. But if you just look at the last reports at ASCO and ASH last year, we're still seeing a lot of people relapse after CAR T, but some of them haven't relapsed, and that's pretty encouraging because these are all people who have had 5, 6, 8 lines of therapy. So if we can do it if we do it as first line therapy, and if we have BiTEs off the shelf that are as good as CAR T, then I think we could do it in 5 years.
Okay, and then is there anything? Is it purely CAR T, or are there other things that we should be aware of?
Well, the coup de grace would be a CAR T or BiTE maybe, but other things that you should be watching, venetoclax you should be watching. It's very effective in myeloma. It's called Venclexta, marketed by AbbVie. Venclexta. It's AbbVie and Genentech are studying it, are marketing it. Well, it's already on the market for CLL, so it's already out there, but it's only now making its impact in myeloma. And the other would be some of the new antibody drug conjugates that are looking very exciting. I would not be looking at selinexor. I think it's bound to fail. It's too toxic.
If we circle back to CAR T, what percentage of MM patients are actually eligible for CAR T in terms of age and health?
So there's no age limit on a CAR T. We're about to give a 78-year-old a CAR T.
Okay.
And if we can engineer them to a point where we're not seeing a lot of toxicities, then anyone would be fit enough.
Okay.
The point is that there are people who get it as an outpatient and have no side effects, and within a month their disease is gone.
Okay. And your estimate of number of MM patients in the, what you call the academic centers and North California side versus people being treated in the community setting? Your guess of the percentage of each?
Right. So remember, at the moment, we only have myeloma-targeted CAR Ts, that is BCMA-targeted CAR Ts, on research basis. So it has to be done. There are 10 centers in the U.S., I think, that are doing it right now. So right now it's very, very, very limited. But if it proves to be effective and curative, we're going to have to figure out how to give it to the 100,000 people